He has Cloud9's winning jungler standing by for post-game conversation.
That's right, Meteos. I have you here going to the finals now. How does it feel to be headed to Toronto after that intense 5-game series?
Well, I think we were going to Toronto either way. Yeah, but it feels a lot better to be in the finals. Yeah, it feels great.
I have to say, the whole team, but specifically you as well, have had a lot of improvement over this split. What has been like the biggest factor for you personally, coming back and now seeing this success that you're having again?
Well, I think that before this split, I had trouble recognizing things that I was doing wrong. I would make mistakes and not necessarily realize I was making them, but this split, I was able to take a step back, come in with sort of a fresh look at the game, and really try to work on the areas that I need to work on.
It looked like you put that into practice that last game as well after your first invade failed on Reignover. What was the communication like right after that? Because you immediately went back to the Wraith camp and stole them right the second time.
Yeah, I would say the whole series, I wasn't really playing well. I think my team carried me pretty hard. Reignover outperformed me, but in the last game, I was like, okay, this is the one that counts. There's the long pause. It was super hard, but I was like, nah, I don't want to lose. I'm going to win. So then when that invade failed, I was pretty sad. I sort of like face bombed, but then I was like, I really don't want to lose. So just kept trying to stay focused and do my best, and it worked out.
Let's try again. One guy, though, that did carry you, as you're talking about your team doing really well, was Impact. He had an amazing game. And there's been about a lot of talk. At the beginning of the split, what was communication like with Impact? And then what is it like now? Because it looks like there's a lot more coordination with him and just a lot of improvement all around.
I think Impact's just a beast. I don't really see him lose lane ever. And he's put in bad situations a lot, and he always comes out ahead. So Impact's extremely good. As far as his communication, obviously English isn't his first language, but we can understand each other fairly well. We never really have issues. There's been some stuff here and there, but overall I think it's pretty good.
All right, well, good luck heading to Toronto as one of the final teams. We are going to send it over to the analyst desk now for a little bit of analysis.
A little bit of analysis is
just
coming your way,
bit.
Kobe. Yeah, exactly that. But congratulations to Cloud9, who pull out the 5-game series, 3-2 victory over Immortals. That's a crushing defeat for them to have that repeat semifinals loss. But ultimately, Mark, you also reign supreme here on the desk, having the correct prediction for Cloud9 to win this series.
Yeah, I had it right. Crumbs, who did you have again? I forget.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about who was going to vote the entire time. It's like
No, you were wrong.
You were wrong.
You said
Simple.
Immortals. I got it.
There it is. All right, well then let's break this series down, because ultimately a fantastic victory for Cloud9 in what was a very exciting 5th game too, right? It wasn't one of those series where it comes down to the wire and then someone smashes somebody in that 5th game. It was very back and forth. Both teams had opportunities to get leads and come out on top. But at the end of the day, Cloud9 does it. And very much what you were talking about, the Syndra is like the one thing you were scared of for Jensen. He does lock it in this time around.
The one thing I want to commend for Cloud9 is the intentional delaying of the Dragon. They're like, okay, Dragon's going to take forever. We don't want to deal with Immortals getting an early Dragon. First one's Ocean. Let's take it at 20 minutes. Let's make sure that all the Dragons are delayed. And surely enough, next Dragon is an Infernal. So I like the adaptation, if you will.
We talked about the scariness of the RNG of the Dragons for Cloud9 in this game specifically. They were aided in that, being able to kind of stave off the aggression around the Dragon for quite some time, and ultimately then get to the point where they could have the proactive moves around that global objective.
I think the big thing is that one dive that Immortals sent bot lane, that really big play, the biggest probably play of the game, because it just went so wrong. They got picked off all over the place, and that is really, to me, an issue when you pick this like global dive bot lane comp and then like you try it and someone's going on Smoothie, someone's going on Impact, and it was basically a mess.
And the thing is, that's kind of the play that we addressed to be the focal point for Immortals during this game, and they just executed on it so late. That play should not have come at that time. It should have been way ahead of time. As soon as you hit level 6, everybody to the bot lane, make it happen. But unfortunately, they pull the trigger when Cloud9 has a lot of time to respond to it. They're already aware of the situation. They have TPs ready. The proper preparations aren't checked, and because the coordination isn't there, they also split up from the fight, making it so horrendous that it turns into a Baron.
An aggressive move, but didn't do the homework to make sure that it would be executed on 100%. Now, before we continue here on the desk, Kobe has another interview prepped, this time with Wild Turtle, so let's hand it off.
That's right. I am here with Wild Turtle. Now, you guys can still qualify for Worlds through either second place points or by working through the gauntlet, and you're still going to play in Toronto. So how is the team going to refocus kind of after this? Because there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we're just gonna think about the future right now. Like, we're pretty crushed by the loss. Like, we didn't expect to lose here, and I think Cloud9 just played the better game today, and we just didn't play as well as we should have. And I feel like, yeah, I don't know. It's just really sad that we lost here.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Obviously not the outcome you wanted, but also about the changes with the patch. How do you feel about the first turret gold and how it's really affected bottom lane?
I think it's made the game a little bit more interesting, and like the first turret is worth a lot more gold, so it means like people are gonna have to contest a lot more and gonna play through bottom a lot more. And I think it's really fun to play right now.
All right, well, good luck moving forward, Turtle. Do you have anything you want to say to your fans and to all the citizens of Toronto that you're about to go visit?
All right, see you guys in Toronto, but I'm not playing for first, unfortunately.
All right, well, thank you once again, and we're going to send it back to the analysis.
Thank you very much, Kobe, one last time. Getting to hear from Wild Turtle on the Immortals loss. I know it's a tough one, but first of all, a lot of respect to him for taking the time to talk to us after a stinging loss like that. Kobe did mention the fact that still very much alive when it comes to that race for Worlds seeding. So it's not as though this spells the end of Immortals' journey. And I guess I'll use this opportunity to let's talk about Immortals before we refocus on Cloud9 and what we would like to see out of Immortals as they do make that push for maybe the second or third seed for North America at Worlds.
I think a problem with Immortals so far is that since they're so bloody, that kind of is an instinctual way of playing the game where you just kind of get a feeling for it and you just keep going for all these sorts of kills and skirmishes that happen around the map. But it seems that they're struggling with sticking to a game plan. When it comes down to here's a composition, here's what you have to do with the composition exactly, here are your power spikes, your windows of opportunity that are built into the comps, not just happen because you killed your solo laner, that they don't seem to know exactly how to pull these off. So I think that what they need is just a little bit more composure and pre-game planning, that they can have an outline for their games as opposed to just go in there and rough it out.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it's tough to be like, oh, they play so fast all the time, and then you reach playoffs and people just start playing slower. They don't make the same mistakes. The prep is way more intense in terms of like what you're expecting. Right. And just your overall mindset to the game is very different. And I think that can hurt teams that capitalize on mistakes as well as Immortals does versus, I don't want to speak too soon, but TSM in the regular season often had these like man advantages that they created through pressure and rotations versus man advantages through just solo kills and things like that. So I think moving forward, they have to get more along the lines of having a really distinct game plan and following that versus winning some fights.
And I think it kind of showed itself, particularly here in Game 5, that it seems as though a lot of Immortals' game plan, for example, is that when things aren't going their way, it becomes very much throw everyone into all three lanes, push the, the reason why they have so much minion pressure all the time is because they're always in the side lanes pushing, but it feels like that seems to be now maybe one of their only tactics in terms of spreading out the map and actually creating those 2v2s, 3v3s, and whatnot.
To be fair, I think Cloud9 did not manage the waves very well throughout the entire series. They usually lacked the actual pressure first, even though they had winning matchups. But as you mentioned, Immortals was there to the waves first. They did almost always have three people farming a lot of times, and that's why they're able to keep up the pressure and kind of control the tempo regardless of the gold differential. I mean, we saw like 7K behind, and they're still able to defend the Baron, which should not happen at that point. But, I mean, the cohesion that is necessary for not just to have pressure, but to look for an actual plan to, hey, we're 7K down, but we have to take this fight right now. How are we going to pull it off? We see TPs in odd places. We don't see the coordination that's necessary to attack from multiple angles at a time. And just communication and kind of, I guess, being in a position where you're behind is not something that they're very much used to. So this should be a good thing for them.
And I think another thing, too, is potentially their drafts. I think they're always a team that has been a little loose on the drafts where they get away with some things that they really shouldn't be able to. And especially in their prep, when we heard last split that they played like 1 million games of Lucian top and they didn't really branch out a ton in preparation. I wonder, I don't want to say this is like the truth and what happened, but they seem to get crushed with that Rumble ban. As soon as that Rumble ban came through, Huni really seemed to not have an impact until he got on his GP game. And then after that, once again, the other champions didn't seem to be working that well. Lissandra basically just got bullied by Impact for a large portion of that game. Sure, he had some pressure at different points, but he didn't get anything done that was very notable. And on the other hand, like Impact was basically soloing out Wild Turtle every fight and drawing a ton of focus.
Well, they've got a week to kind of shore up those weaknesses and play in that third, fourth matchup. Of course, we don't know who they'll be playing yet, as TSM and CLG have to play tomorrow. I now want to refocus on C9. While Immortals did have the wave control, for example, they did not have control of the fights, and we saw that very early. Well, not very early on. We saw that kind of through the mid game. 23 minutes into the game, 4-0 for Cloud9 here near the Drake, starting in the blue. Jungle in the bot lane, moving towards the Drake.
And Cloud9 this entire game has had such good vision in the bot side, and this is just so forced. You're immediately tanking turret aggro, and they're not coordinated because you see Lissandra's going to TP down here, but she's going to go onto Meteos instead, where the focus should be everybody on Smoothie, and they just don't go for the actual right target. And you have Impact in the backline. Just Wild Turtle can't deal with this. You cannot fight. Jin cannot deal with Echo pretty much any stage of the game, and he just does such a wonderful job of making sure that the backline is zoned out. And if you're any character and you've soloed out the mid laner and AD carry, you pretty much did your job phenomenally.
Right, I think this was what we were talking about as like the kind of back-breaking play where it was pretty telegraphed. They were already in movement, C9 to catch it, and then once it started, Immortals was all over the place where they're kind of chasing Smoothie, they're not peeling back for Turtle, Hooney's getting caught off on the side. It was just kind of a disaster of a play.
Right, but it is one of those plays that maybe 8, 9 out of 10 times for Immortals will be successful most of the time because they're just doing it so quickly and before C9 can, or the opposing team can get into position. Here, though, C9 is prepared for it. As you mentioned, it was telegraphed. Smoothie's in position to keep Sneaky safe. The focus isn't there from Immortals. Ultimately, a one fight for C9. They're going to pick Dragons after that and push their lead forward.
See, one of the things I would have liked to see that is a bit of a tougher play to make, and we were talking about it on the desk earlier, is since you have the Rek'Sai and you have the Lissandra, you have such a good way of TPing down to the bot side of the map. You can force something in the top side, make sure that Cloud9 reacts, and immediately use your globals, go bottom, force a play down there, and you have an easy numbers advantage without the chance of actually any counterplay. And that's an easy way of breaking kind of the defense that Cloud9 had mounted because they did a really good job of making sure that the entire river is warded. I mean, at some point, I think they had like seven wards in the bot lane.
And a scuttle crab.
Literally river, just to make sure that nobody's going down there. So they were very aware that that was the game plan from Immortals, and maybe Immortals wasn't aware that that was their own plan.
Yeah, one can only assume, right? All right, but that brings us to this 29-minute replay that we have. 4 for 1 for Cloud9 in the top lane. Another big one. This was once again off of Immortals' aggression here, looking for the fight, but Cloud9 will win it.
You see Smoothie very aware of what his job is. He's desperate to get over to one of his carries. He's able to flash onto Sneaky, spit him back out. And then this is what we're talking about, where the backline of C9 is relatively healthy, while Impact is just soloing out Immortals backline. And so,
Turtle, man, is just, he's got no options.
There's no one peeling for him. It's just an echo on your face, and no one cares. I mean, they were able to get the Syndra, but the thing about Syndra, she's almost always willing to trade her damage right back, and because the no self-ult from Hooney, I think he dropped his combo on him, and then the one that he does ult in Sneaky just gets pulled away, and it was just another fight where they didn't seem to have like everything layer properly. Instead of a self-ult from Hooney to stall out that back line and then get more combos out.
You know, the crazy thing is if they had just focused Impact, they probably would have been able to just trade away a kill and slowly crawl back into the game. Constantly killing the guy that's solo diving in your backline 1v3 is a pretty easy target when you have so much TC to layer between Liz, Jin, and Rek'Sai.
All right, well, now it's time to crown the North American LCS Player of the Series. And after that last game, Irene said Impact looked better today than during his Season 3 championship run. Now, the honor is going to belong to him. We can debate that statement, but he is picking up Player of the Series honors here. It's important to note, though, that, at times throughout this series, all of the players on C9 did step up in ways, but Impact here in the games that they won definitely shined.
And he got so many advantages on his own in the top lane. Whether it was a winning matchup or a losing matchup, absorbing pressure, creating advantages on his own, getting TP advantages, getting just so much on the map. While his TP plays weren't really the best, the fact that he was able to just put so much pressure on the map and kind of distract Immortals and throw them off their game, because usually they just say, all right, snowball top, win the game. Okay, you can't snowball onto this guy.
Well, I think the thing is, like, the way that Hooney Rainover generally worked was through snowballing a topside matchup or something. The fact that they never really got that going throughout this entire series was a big problem, I think, because that's just kind of how they're used to Hooney having pressure and being able to do whatever he wants. And the one Riven game where that happened, it's just not a great pick for the comp overall. So he wasn't able to translate the Riven solo lead into a team setting. So I think the fact that Impact could deal with that much focus and pressure for the entire series was kind of what set his whole team up to win.
Right. The other things that I love about his play in this series specifically is the fact that he's won across 3 champions, right? So he won with 3 unique champions, which bodes well moving forward, as well as the fact that 2 of those champions he sustained losses on before winning, which means that as a player, he is very comfortable having a bad game and saying just as quickly, I'm okay with playing it. We had questions around the Echo performance and picking it again when Shen, for example, was on the table. But he says, nope, it was a bad game. I have a mastery of this champion. I'm willing to play it, pulls it out, and has his best KDA in that 5th game. So I think that that is definitely a big thing for Cloud9 looking ahead, to know that he can play across multiple styles of champions and play them well.
Right, and I think it's important to point out this really was kind of a team victory. Multiple different players had their kind of bright moments. Smoothie was someone I think I didn't see like a major mistake from almost the whole series, so he was consistently doing exactly what his team needed him to do. Jensen had some big games. Meteos.
Miki's arrows that final game were really setting up a lot of plays, particularly picking around the map that just create those small advantages that, you know, snowball the lead maybe a little bit extra of a 800 gold every arrow, and that adds up. And
Meteos, he dealt with pressure very well. We talked about in game 1, 7 visits into his jungle by Immortals in the first few minutes, and yet he's the one who gets first blood. So fantastic play out of him. You mentioned Smoothie just being ultra consistent. It's hard to shine as a support, particularly right now in this meta, and there he was time and time again, keeping his carry safe. Jensen, I'd say of all the players, was the one that most obviously had good and bad games, right? We saw, of course, good play on the Syndra, but some struggling on the LeBlanc, for example. But all in all, I think a huge team victory for Cloud9 here. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the updated playoff bracket. Now, 6 teams entered the playoffs. Now, only 3 remain. Cloud9 defeated Team Envy to move on to the semis and is now headed to the finals after besting our 2nd seed in Immortals. Of course, alive on the other side of the bracket is TSM and Counterlogic Gaming, who face off tomorrow in our 2nd semi-final series. The next saga in the TSM and CLG rivalry continues with Doublelift and Aphromoo going head-to-head in order to lead their respective squads to another finals appearance. Let's talk about this matchup, gentlemen. It's always exciting to see these 2 teams go up against each other, but it's a rematch of our spring finals as well as our summer finals. And here we have CLG, you know, making a run, trying to three-peat here against our #1 seeded TSM.
I am always excited for El Clásico. That is such a great game to see because you know that these teams take each other very seriously. There's legacies behind each other. There's so much on the line for each of these teams to actually prove whatever they're doing in this split, where the TSM is just saying, we are the best team in that North America has ever had. CLG just saying, we actually know how to bounce back.
I think it's very interesting because it does seem to be such like a David versus Goliath kind of thing, where you look at TSM and you're like, all their players are so good in lane. It's like only standard lanes for the first 5 minutes, basically. They obviously have great team movement, and then you're looking and saying, like, where exactly does CLG have?
Where do they win this?
Yeah, where's their advantage? And you would say, like, oh, it's in teamwork.
CLG has ingredient X.
Yeah. You're like, maybe coaching, like Tony Zixlol is generally considered really good, and it's such a tough match to look at. But that's why I think it's interesting, because CLG kind of had this history of winning through teamwork.
Yeah, and maybe there is a bit of an unknown factor, but for some reason or another, CLG has gotten the better of TSM in the last 2 LCS finals. So when you arrive at a best-of-5 series here in the playoffs, especially given the kind of that upswing of CLG, although it might be positioned as a David and Goliath story, there's a piece of me that wants to say this might be one of the closest series we've ever seen still.
Well, one of the other things that I think is important to look at for maybe TSM's dominance is the fact that towards the end of the regular split, they did struggle with the meta changing a bit. And they had a lot of games that there were kind of a lot of oopsies. They were lost to P1, none sure what the meta stood at. And once again, even right now, we're seeing teams all across the globe trying to figure out the meta, and nobody has really found the exact way. There's so many picks all over the world that are valued here but not valued over there, that I think that once again, we're going to see a matchup where 2 teams just say, okay, maybe our style is better than yours, and that amount of research is going to be enough to catapult somebody to victory.
Very much so. CLG, TSM, always a hype match. We don't have to do too much talking about it. That's going to do it for us, but stick around because in just 5 minutes, Facebook Live returns featuring a Q&A with Pastry Time, Golden Glue, and Alex each. So head over to facebook.com/LulEsports with your questions about life, league, and the mid lane. Now for myself, Mark, Crumbs, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.